Hey, it's Coach Nick Tumminello. I wanted to give you a few coaching updates on the Performance University tight core rotation exercise, which I popularized a little over a year ago. There's a couple little tweaks to this exercise, but the way we're coaching it now versus the way I originally taught it in the videos, this is based on newer things I've learned about the spine and biomechanics and just getting better at making the exercise safer and more efficient, which is our goal with every exercise. So, we talked about progressing the exercise by splitting your stance. I think it was in the level 2 or level 3 progression in the YouTube video, where you add quickness to the movement. Now, one quick tip on that. It's okay to split your stance, but as long as you don't split your stance, I say two rules here. As long as you don't have a long stride, so don't split your stance like this, like a lunge. Because if you split your stance like a lunge in a long position like this, I've now locked my pelvis in. You see, my pelvis can't rotate. Only my thoracic can rotate. I basically locked in the lower half of my spine, and as I'm performing the tight rotation, which I don't recommend doing, is I'm causing a lot of shear force at the top. I'm being all thoracic dominant. That's good for low-load thoracic mobility, but very bad for high-load explosive movement because I'm putting a lot of shearing and a lot of torque through my spine. I want to allow my pelvis to rotate. That way I can utilize the big, powerful hip musculature. So that way everything, the lower half of the spine, moves together like so or like so. If I lock down my pelvis and just rotate my shoulders, that's what happens. So that's where shearing is happening, and it's normally happening at one or a very small segment and not being dissipated up and down the spine. That's a surefire way to start creating some cumulative trauma or some damage. So if you're in a split stance, we want the heel up and a short stride. By having a heel up and a short stride, that still allows me to move my pelvis during the tight rotation. So that's one thing that we've tweaked. The other thing is, which goes pretty much piggybacks off of what I just said, is that I used to teach it, hips don't move, thoracic moves. And that was a mistake because we, again, took something from a corrective exercise standpoint, thinking thoracic mobility from rotation good, lumbar rotation bad, but we forgot about hip rotation. So again, we're putting a lot of torque on the spine, especially in one area, if I don't allow my hips to move. So the way we coach it now, whether you're in a short stride position or you're in a squared stance, is that you want your hips, referencing my right side here, you want my right hip and my right shoulder to move together at the same rate, and then when I explode back, I want my left hip and left shoulder to move together at the same rate. So now I'm looking at this movement. I want to see the pelvis rotate. I don't want to see opposite movement. That's a lot of torque on the spine. So again, we don't talk about hips stay stable, move from thoracic. We want hips and hips and shoulders moving together at the same rate. And don't forget, this exercise is a complete waste of time unless you move fast. You're going to get the muscles only become loaded through momentum, and momentum is extremely important to train. We don't train it enough for things like sprinting, for boxing. Those things are happening at explosive paces with momentum, and the muscle firing patterns that are happening when there's momentum are different than the muscle firing patterns that are happening without speed, which is why it's important that we do some exercises, especially through rotation, with speed and force. So that's the 2.0 version of the tight rotation. Start incorporating that one into your workouts. Make those little tweaks. I promise you it'll make your tight rotations a lot more safe, effective, and efficient.